Hey, what's up guys? It's Trooper here, and today we're going to be talking about the Mimic. Now, I've been a longtime FNAF fan. I've been invested since the very first game, so I've had a lot of changing opinions over the years about the lore. And I'm not really going to go too much into the lore itself in this video, more so just my opinions on the character and where I think this story is going. So firstly, I think the idea of the Mimic is really cool. I like the way that the Mimic is portrayed in the books, and I like the idea of something like that being in the games. I'm a big fan of Glitch Trap, and I think that, you know, even in just Help Wanted, without the books, without Security Breach or anything, you know, you could realistically theorize that it was a program mimicking something, and that pre-thought is something we've never really had in FNAF. I really do like the idea, and I do like some of the ways that we're getting there. But I am very afraid of retconning and changing the lore of old games. I'm very worried that going as far back as we are, you know, before any other games in the timeline, I'm very worried that the Mimic will end up replacing some iconic characters, maybe messing up some lore. I think adding new characters so late into the franchise, but yet before any game that, you know, we've ever seen, without any mention of the Mimic, would be a little strange. And the only way they could have the old games mention the Mimic is if they make the Mimic an old character, and I'm very scared of that. The main one I'm worried about is the puppet. It is a scary idea that the Mimic could end up being the puppet, Fredbear, or really anyone else at any point in time. The lore is already in a rough spot. We're unsure of where the books stand, we haven't gotten much clarification, and Security Breach and Help Wanted 2 have not necessarily been the clearest or given us satisfying answers. So hopefully they don't take that as an excuse to change something in the old games or add something to the old games that damages that story. At the end of the day, I am mainly a fan of Scott Cawthon's FNAF games, and the last thing I want this series to do is go back and damage the story of those games or affect those games in any way. I really wish the FNAF story would move forward. I would like to see, you know, Security Breach and onward. I don't want to keep going back and retconning these things. Some clarification is helpful, but I feel like we really just need to move forward. I want to see new FNAF stories that do not affect the old lore in major ways. Now, Steel Wool has already had a couple Easter eggs, like the Grave Order Easter egg and things like that, that may clarify or affect the old lore, and I'm really okay with those. I think those are helpful for us to understand questions that we still don't have answers to. But when it comes to setting a game before even FNAF 4 and possibly changing or retconning the lore, I'm very scared of it, and I don't see it turning out well. Help Wanted 2 was pretty good, and the lore of that was interesting, but Security Breach was a bad base to work off of. And I would not like to see FNAF fall into a cycle of, you know, we just got to keep going back to the old games. We can't move forward. We got to keep focusing on those Scott Cawthon games. And I understand why they're doing it. The old games were the start of the series. Fantastic games, fantastic story. But if we're going to hand the games off to new developers, which has happened now for years, we should allow them to make their own stories, move forward, make their own lore, and let them flesh it out. If Scott is going to be as uninvolved as he is choosing to be now, he needs to make the decision to give other people control. And that's scary. You know, I don't want anyone coming in here and messing up all the lore, but Scott's communication with Steel Wool has been poor. How are they going to properly execute the lore when they're not being given all the information? So, all those things combined make me very worried for not only the game's Secret of the Mimic, but more so what will happen to the lore when that game comes out. If there are messy lore details or things that affect the older games, it's going to be upsetting. Because Steel Wool has already messed up and they've redeemed themselves a little, but I'd really like to see them do better and do more. Some more general things about the Mimic. Again, earlier I said I really like the idea of the Mimic, and I think it's very interesting its backstory in the books. Now, whether it will have the same backstory in the games is questionable. The trailer already seems to show some details that do not line up with the books. So it's possible that it's still not fully canon. In that case, if they do change the backstory, I hope it's equally as interesting. Because the Mimic is a really cool character idea, and we really haven't seen anything like that. And hopefully, after Secret of the Mimic, which is set before any other FNAF game, hopefully then Steelwool and Scott can finally move forward with the story. Because I'm very interested to see what happens in the future of these games. If the books are canon to the games, there's a lot of interesting stories and concepts in there that I believe could be expanded on in future games. If those books are not canon to the games, then we need a lot more explanation. So either way, we need to move forward. And hopefully, after this very last visit, far, far back in the timeline, far, far back in the franchise, we can finally move forward. So thanks for watching, guys. I'm Schubert, and have a good day.